Hi everyone, and welcome to the second season of Youth Chat on CYC. My name is James, and joining me today are amazing youth members, Grace, Daniel, and Karen. And today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, finding our purpose. So let's dive into the first question. So what is our purpose, and what does the world tell us about how to find our purpose? So any thoughts, guys?
I'm just excited that you considered me a youth still. I feel very old, so thanks
Always,
for that, James.
always.
Okay, well, I'll start. Yeah, look, the world kind of deals with the whole idea of purpose. It seems like a scientific, philosophical way. Lots of roundabouts, and people like Dawkins and those kinds of people. They seem to justify it in a evolutionary sense, where we have purpose to kind of motivate us to continue living, and therefore continue to mate and pass on our DNA, which seems to be the purpose of our existence. The problem I feel with that is okay, well, what's the point of procreating? What's the point of passing on your DNA? There's got to be something bigger than that.
Yeah.
And then so now with the industrial revolution, where now we have jobs, and our focus has moved away from family, religion, like it was in the olden days. Now it's work, community. That seems to kind of be the focus. But ultimately, I actually do not know exactly what the world teaches our purpose is, because you get something different from everywhere. It just seems to be a bit lost.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. As you said, there are many factors, there are many perspectives of what the world thinks our purpose should be. Sometimes it's money, social status, having the best business in the world. It's all based on worldly matters, and a lot of people tend to think sometimes it forces them to ask the question: is there something more than just these worldly things? Is there something more than just having a higher status in the world? There has to be something more to it, and I think that's another question we should all ask ourselves when we find ourselves, being under the influence of just worldly, materialistic objects and materialistic things. So I think that's another thing we should consider.
I feel like a lot of people ask themselves that question, yet since they distance themselves from God, and they're not familiar with, faith or religion as a whole, they find themselves having some sort of void, and a void that, they try to fill with lots of earthly desires and materialistic things, but not. I feel like most humans that aren't familiar with, God's love and God's presence just learn to live with that sort of void within them. And, that's why I think we're so lucky as Christians, because we have an opportunity to fill that void, and we have, we're lucky enough to be fulfilled, within our lives, I feel like a lot of people that don't know God don't ever get that opportunity. And I feel like that kind of dives into also our purpose as Christians, to be able to show people that don't know God that sort of fulfillment and that euphoric feeling you get once you receive that sort of fulfillment from God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think the main difference between what the world thinks our purpose should be and our purpose as Christians is that the world is focused on me, and it's very much self-centered, and how do I achieve the most amazing things? How do I outdo people? How successful can I be? How much money can I make? Whereas the purpose of a Christian life and what we are taught as Christians is we're actually meant to deny ourselves. And our purpose here is to continue the work of Christ and show people the love that Christ showed us, and show them so much love and kindness that they see something different within us, and they're drawn to us and they want to find out more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And as you said, Karen, it's sort of, we should deny ourselves, we should crucify our worldly, lustful love for the world and crucify on the cross. And in other words, it's as it says in the verse, we deny ourselves in order to attain, the heavenly kingdom. And as you also said, it's sort of like a mission as Father Anthony Messier, he amazingly said in a very ironic way, it's like we should sort of set a mission for ourselves, a more spiritual mission, because a lot of times we think that our mission's to get married or our mission's to have own this business, but that's more of, it's more of goals.
Yep.
And it's good to have goals. It's good to have goals, but it's not really, it should not be our main priority. Our main priority should be having a mission. And God does have a mission for us, and that is to preach His word and serving Him. And serving Him doesn't have to mean, we have to do things like everyone else, because God created us in our own unique way. And so serving Him can be in our own way, whether it's sometimes dying as a martyr. Also, because when people die as a martyr, they change people through their bravery and their courage. Yeah. Other ways can be, even the most simple thing can be walking on the street and just giving people a simple smile and saying hello. And because sometimes you never know that there's someone who's very depressed in life and he's suffering from anxiety, and let's say he's thinking of committing suicide the next day, and you happen to walk by that person, you give him a smile and say hello, you actually might end up saving him, because you made him feel that his self-worth, like his dignity in this world. And I think that's another way of serving God's purpose, showing that love, because as we learned, God is love. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's more, in this world and in this modern society, actions speak louder than words. So displaying God's love and compassion in your everyday life. Like, I went to a non-Coptic school, and people had no idea that I was Christian per se from the things I would say, but it was more the things that I did and more the things that I didn't do. And it was how, my actions and reactions towards certain situations and, encounters which people would come up at least once a week. Someone would come up to me and they'll be like, oh, why don't you come out with us? Or, why don't you go out with us? Or, what's your deal? And then that's kind of my leeway to go, well, on Fridays I'm not going out, I'm going to youth meeting. Or, I can't go Saturday night because Sunday morning I have church. And it's just things like that planting seeds wherever you go, it's more, that's where I find my purpose, It's walking through life as some sort of, a little like a light for God to work through me, and to plant seeds in people's lives, get people thinking, because it leaves a lasting impression. When you encounter someone and you show your Christian morals and your values and your beliefs, it doesn't necessarily rub off instantly. They think about it and they reflect, and they say, she seems to have some sort of fulfillment in her life, something that I've been looking for, in earthly desires, and that it plants seeds. And it's that type of mentality that we should, go about, like as you were saying, having that outward impression that, let God work through us. I feel like it's super important, especially, in this sort of society, in this environment where, there are so many times, opportunities, like you were saying, we're all working now, and we're all surrounded by people that aren't necessarily like us, and just being that difference.
Yeah. But at the same time, like the caveat here is, this might be interpreted as, like the world is just this evil place, have nothing to do with it, and just focus on God and, attaining Christ and all that. But the reality of the situation is we are part of this world, God created this world and created us in it, and even the mission to the disciples, it wasn't forget about the world and, go do your own thing and just wait to die in your own little cave. It was to transform the world. I mean, like the disciples, the apostles, they had their families, they had their work, they were part of the community. So still pursue your passion, still pursue your career, still pursue, the things that are, quote unquote, like worldly, because this is like God's desire for us, we are part of it. But through it, we transform what we do. We transform the things around us. And I think that when your purpose is ultimately heaven, and the problem with that is heaven is something that we don't really, like, you don't see it in its fullness. Like, this is all we know, earth. So when we do things for like heaven, it's like, you know, when like you're studying in year 9 for your HSC, like it's so far away.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm not going to worry about it now. And kind of, for me personally at least, that kind of seems like what heaven is. It's just this far away place that I've never experienced. So, and the only thing I've experienced is earth. So I'm going to work for the things of earth. But then when we kind of develop that understanding that the purpose of this life is to ultimately lead us into heaven, everything that we do becomes a lot more simpler and less anxiety. You know, you just leave it in his hands. You do your best to follow God's will. And then, you know, as you do your thing, your work, your career, whatever, rich, poor, famous, not famous, you know, famous musician, not a famous musician, whatever it is, and no matter how worldly you are, like God works through all that.
And I think also there's nothing wrong with working hard and wanting to be successful and wanting to have a good job. But I think the most important thing is that everything we should do should be done for the glory of God and not for glorification for ourselves. So whatever job we do, whatever thing we study, however we spend our time, if the underlying factor is to glorify God and not bring attention and praise to ourselves, then there's nothing wrong with it. And like the Lord, yes, we're meant to persevere and struggle in this life, but it doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Like the Lord gives us so many blessings and opportunities to work, to study, and all we need to do is use that to glorify Him. So I think there's nothing wrong with like pursuing things that are worldly, but as long as we have glorifying God as the underlying like purpose.
Okay. Yeah, and as you said, you know, as long as it doesn't control us, for example, we don't let TV control us. So let's say we have to go to church and there's this amazing TV show that we love so much. Yeah, it's okay to watch TV, but we don't let it control us to the point that we stay back to it for that TV show and we miss out on church. And, you know, furthermore, I think, and I imagine myself, or imagine us going to heaven on Judgment Day, and then Jesus says to us, "Well done, good and faithful servant," and then he looks behind our shoulders and then he says, "Who did you bring with you?" So I think that should remind us, we should focus on our spiritual life as well and developing our spiritual growth with God, struggling to perfection, but again, reminding ourselves that our purpose is to bring someone with us or to save a soul, bring them to the light, because as Jesus said to us, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned?" And I think it's very important to recognize that. And I like to think also, because this is a real story, I like to think how Jesus uses his own people in his own way, and he just uses it to have an impact on people spiritually. For example, there was a guy named Nick Vujicic. I can't pronounce his name properly. Yeah, you know him?
Yeah, no, he doesn't have arms or legs.
Yeah, born without arms or legs, And I like how he tells his story when he says that he tried to commit suicide, tried to drown himself, but then when he found Jesus, how Jesus just changed him phenomenally in the fact, not just himself, but the impact that he's had on other people, thousands and thousands of people, and how he's brought them to Christianity, and he is sort of accomplishing God's purpose in that sense. And so I like the fact how, as you guys said, Jesus, how he works in us in his own way that no one can ever dream of, as Nick did and as many people have done. Yeah. So it's amazing how purpose, when we see purpose from a spiritual perspective and how God does it, it's just amazing. Yeah.
And he has something for all of us.
Yeah.
You know, like no one's created by accident, you know, by human means. I mean, we can interpret some people's existence like an accident, you know, by our means, but, you know, in God's eyes, there's no accident. And everything has its purpose. And, you know, like, I just feel like I've been reflecting on this, and I think God's will for us or purpose for us isn't as sophisticated or as hidden as we might think it to be. You know, we always pick up God's will or His purpose when it comes to, you know, a particular job or a particular life-changing instance. But the reality is, you know, there's God's will everywhere throughout my day to day. I mean, you know, today is Wednesday. Do I choose to fast or do I choose not to fast? I mean, that's something right there for me to actively choose to want God's will or not.
Yeah.
You know, and multiple examples I can give. But then, you know, I get caught up on now suddenly when it comes to job, I want God's will. It's, you know, like there's always that purpose, and the more you pursue God's will and work towards it, I think the more clear it becomes, and the more you achieve that purpose of, you know, eventually, if God counts us worthy, you know,
Absolutely.
eternal life.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Well, so far, amazing responses from our lovely youth members. So we're going to be having a break now, and join us on our next part of episode 1 of season 2, Finding Our Purpose. Welcome back to the first episode of our second season, part 2. So let's dive into the next question. A common question that people like to ask: there is a teaching that our purpose is love and be loved, but what does that mean? So again, any thoughts, any responses on this question?
I guess the obvious thing that comes to mind is like God is love. And you see that within, you know, that even God Himself is a community with the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And that outflowing of love led to the creation of us and, you know, Him dwelling in us. So it kind of seems like it's a very fundamental purpose of our existence, which is love. And perhaps that's why Christ coming down to us and instructing us that what we do to others is what we do to Him. It's not like, I don't think it's like a metaphorical thing where like, oh, you know, when you get hurt, it's as if you hurt me. No, I think it truly is that the case that Christ is describing it. What you do to others is what you do to me, because He actually literally dwells in those people. And so, I mean, if that's the case, that the purpose of, if the result of love is our creation, then clearly love is the purpose of our existence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also, and that reminds me of one of the verses in the Bible where I can't remember if it was a disciple, one of the Jewish members, but they specifically asked Jesus, what are the 2 most important commandments? And He says to them, the first one is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your being. And the second one, you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. And neighbor, that doesn't mean just people that you know, but people that you don't know, strangers, and people of different people, irrespective of religion or cultural background. You show love to them, because as Jesus said, and you know, we can do all these, for example, if we can do all these beautiful works, alms giving, even pray or going to church 7 times a week, but if nothing is done, if that's not done with love, then they are useless. So I think love is very important, showing love, and I think that comes down to that we should not be neglecting those who are, you know, rude to us, or those who are angry at us. Yeah, sometimes we're disgusted with the action that they do, but it doesn't mean that we hate the person. We still love them. You know, for example, when the person that hit Jesus when He was standing trial, He stood firm and told them, why are you hitting me? But it doesn't mean He hated them. He still loved them. I think that's what should happen. You know, when someone's shouting us, for example, about an issue that we do not know about, we should, you know, speak to them calmly, with kindness, and maybe sometimes realize that this person is going through a rough time that I don't know about. So I can't just judge him and say to him, oh, you're a bad person, why are you shouting at me? So I think that's another thing we should always consider.
We need to remember what Jesus went through when He was alive, you know, and all the persecution and the horrible words that were thrown at Him every single day. And it's more, we should take, you know, some like negativity that we are shown or that we are given, and seen it as an opportunity to display God's love through us. You know, rather than a time to, you know, fall into a pool of despair and hatred. Rather, you know, Jesus never fell into that hole. You know, He never felt sorry for himself, you know. He, despite everything that he went through and all the cursing and the, you know, the horrible things that he went through, we need to adopt that sort of mentality that this is an opportunity for me to, you know, we'll never feel like as what Jesus felt, but it's, you know, having a taste of that sort of, you know, the sacrifice that we have to take as humans for being Christian, you know, and taking that opportunity and paying it forward, you know, and it's more like, you know, feeling confident in your faith and being faithful that the Lord has a plan for you despite the challenges that he throws at you. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Any thoughts, Karen?
Yeah, so talking about loving others. So I think, of course, like we're all humans, so we all make mistakes and we all hurt each other intentionally and unintentionally. So I think like it does take a lot of effort and it takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of strength to be patient and loving towards difficult people. But I guess we got to remember that we are all difficult people in our own ways, and none of us are perfect. And just as our Father and just as Christ has forgiven us so many times, we are called to also be merciful and forgive those who sin against us. So I think like we don't need to be like best friends with those who go out of their way to hurt us, but from our end, we still need to show them the love that Christ showed to us. And the best thing we can do is pray for them. And if we treat them kindly and out of love, most of the time that actually touches their hearts and it transforms them. So the love that Christ gives us and we reflect it out into the world, ultimately that will change people that we meet and it will soften their heart. And in a way, it could actually bring them to Christ. So yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, and also to relate to that, I think a big issue that we encounter a lot without even realizing it is that we forget our purpose. We forget, you know, we should be showing love and welcoming to those who's from outside the church or from outside the religion. And a common mistake we've been doing, unfortunately, is that when new people come to the church, people we've not seen before, we're so inferior. In other words, when someone comes in, we stay in our groups and we don't go and welcome them. And I think, you know, we should not be doing that because we're sort of neglecting that purpose in the fact that, you know, we should be going, welcoming them, showing them love, giving them a smile, making them feel welcome. And I saw that recently with one of our lovely servants. What he did was, there was someone, an unusual face I haven't seen in the church before, and he took the liberty to go up and welcome him and say hi and offered him help if he ever needed it. So I think that's something we should be doing more common in the church, and we should not be, you know, say for example, be judging new members because maybe what they're wearing or the way they look, because maybe deep down their heart they could be broken and they need that love to bring them up. So yeah, that's something we should be considering.
Okay.
And I think that leaves us with our last question. How do I change my perspective regarding my purpose as a Christian and shield this from the world's views and messages?
So I think that in order to stick to the purpose that God has for our life, which is to be in union with Him and to be in union with others and live in peace and harmony, I think we need to spend time with God daily, quiet time, just speaking with Him and kneeling before Him and constantly asking Him, God, what works do you want to do? What works do you want me to do? What do you want me to do right now? Who's broken around me, or who needs support? Like, what's the purpose you have for me right now? How can I do your works? And I guess because God is our creator and He knows us inside out, the best place to go and the best being to speak to about our purpose, and so that our purpose is not clouded by all the worldly noise and the world's opinion about what our purpose should be is go straight to God, go straight to our Creator, and constantly pray to Him, constantly speak to Him daily, and sit there in silence and be like, God, like, show me what you want me to do now. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you're involving Him in your life, you know. See, I know for me, I'm less of a person that has this kind of, it's really bad, but like when I have structure, I don't have structure in my life, in anything. I'm very not organized, whatever. So what I found works for me is I talk to God throughout my day. In the car, I almost run a red. I'm like, oh God, please, Jesus, don't let there be a red light camera there. Or, I get a good mark. Oh, thank you, Jesus, for being there for me. Thank you for, thanks for softening the heart of that marker. Or, just kind of reminding yourself throughout the day that all your trials, all your tribulations, and also all your wins and all your, all the good times, everything should be related back to God, Oh, this thing happened today. It's kind of sucks. Thanks. Please, God, be there for me next time this happens and help me guide me to a better path. Something good happens. Thank you, O Lord, for showing your love and your compassion towards me, and may you continue to guide me through that type of thing. I feel like that helps me so much more than dedicating 5 minutes at the end of the day to to talk to Him. Then you spend accumulatively, you end up spending a lot more time with Him, just talking to Him and like He's your friend, more than dedicating time for Him. I feel like it works for me, and I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for your amazing responses and amazing discussion that we had. Thank you again so much. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and please join us next week for another episode on CYC Youth Chat. And God bless you all and have an amazing night.